us a few more minutes. We're not going to start very late, but we just have a remote participant, and we're just trying to make sure that she can hear us and we can hear her. If that doesn't work, we'll start anyway. But just 2 more minutes, please. Yes, I think so.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me? No?
Okay, thank you very much. So what I'll share with you this morning is are the findings of a study that was done to understand the perceptions of public libraries in Africa. This study was actually done in 6 countries in Africa, and it was not only in Eastern Africa. We did it in Eastern, Southern, and West Africa. And as you can see there, we covered countries like Ethiopia, Ghana, Kenya.
Jeffrey, just pause a minute. Let's just sort the sound problem. Let's just sort the sound problem. Do we still have the echo? It's gone. Jeffrey, please go ahead.
Is it okay now?
It's gone.
Okay.
Jeffrey, please go ahead.
It's okay now, eh?
I think what's happening is that someone has the remote participation on. Yeah, but we can hear ourselves there too. We need to switch something off somewhere.
Okay. Is there still...
Testing.
Okay. Is there still...
Testing.
Okay, good.
Testing.
Okay, good. Still there. Okay, good. Still there.
Jeffrey, I think you should continue. No, it's not going to work. Do we have a technician with us? Okay.
Just turn them off, maybe. Maybe just turn them off. Yeah. Okay. I hope there's no echo now. Okay. So as I was saying, the study was conducted in 6 African countries. There's an echo.
Nikki. Nikki.
I'm going to try the microphone. It works. Thank you very much, Jeffrey. Before we go on to our next speaker, who's going to be Richard Atuti from the Kenyan National Library Service, do you have any questions? Anyone in the room? Any questions for Jeffrey about this research? Particularly as you might not have been able to hear him all that well. Just remember to introduce yourself and keep your question as short as possible.
Thank you. My name is Moses Sitati from Nokia Research Center. I just wanted a clarification on the technologies that were being referred to in the study when talking to the libraries. What particular ICTs or technologies were they responding to? What definition?
As far as libraries are concerned, we were interested in simple access to computing, having users access books via the internet, for instance. And it went even as low as having printers, having fax machines, having copiers and stuff like that. So it was the whole spectrum of electronic and digital gadgets that would facilitate better use of facilities and access to services within the library. Yeah.
Any other questions?
Yeah, my name is Eliphas Nyamogo. I'm from the Goethe Institute. I would be interested in knowing whether you have a very clear profile of the people that you interviewed in terms of their ages and their educational background, because I think that also makes a difference when you look at their perception of libraries.
Thank you. Sorry.
Let's just see if there are any more questions, and then you can answer them as well. And I think I would add gender to that breakdown as well, actually, if that was data was available. Any other questions for Jeffrey before I give him back the floor? No, go ahead, Jeffrey.
Sorry, thanks for that question. The profile of the respondent is available, and it goes beyond just gender. It looked at education level, it looked at age, we looked at their socioeconomic status, we looked at their living standards, we looked at their employment status, occupational status, we looked at their household income. So within the larger report, there is a very clear demarcation, and output is split by the various demographics, so you can be able to disaggregate to any level you want, and make any analysis that you would want at that level. And it's not just the report that we have. The data is actually available online on the A4 library, so you can be able to do your own cross-tabulation and analysis to the whatever level you'd want.
Thank you, Jeffrey. We're now going to listen to Richard Atuti, who's the director of the Kenya National Library Services. He's actually been with Kenya National Library Services in different incarnations for many years. And he will give us some examples of how internet has been used innovatively in libraries in Kenya to build community and support development.
Thank you, Chair. Ladies and gentlemen, I am going to speak briefly our experience as a public library, the steps we have taken to embrace technology in the operations of our library services, as well as delivery of services to the end users. A while ago, I was in the earlier group which was in this room. Actually, this room was full to the extent that some of us were left standing. And whenever we speak the subject about libraries, you can see how many people amongst the participants or delegates are interested to hear about libraries. This basically adds to the report Mr. Kimani has presented to us about perceptions about libraries. Do people really embrace the concept of libraries within our communities and within our countries? Therefore, I'll be very brief and confine myself to why the internet at this time round, because that's the focus we are discussing this morning. Well, it goes without saying that the internet facility in our libraries goes a long way to add value to the kind of library services we are providing. Two, when you look at the training of librarians in those days and today, most of us value physical things which we see in our libraries. If you are told somebody you have a virtual library, perhaps he'll want to understand, does it contain books and what kind of books? So what we are trying to address here is that why the internet? The internet is coming as a platform to the library or some part of support, infrastructural support to enable users, to enable service providers to provide quality services and to be able to provide variety of information sources to our users in our libraries. The other issue why I'm seeing internet as an advantage is because physical books are increasingly becoming very expensive as compared to information which is available in digital format, which can be shared widely and faster than physical books within our libraries. Therefore, how does the library promote this access through the internet? The challenge we have had also in our context in Kenya is that cost has been an inhibition to most public libraries and other libraries to embrace technology. But all said and done, even within the limited budgets we have, if we are able to prioritize properly, I believe we can spend some percentage of our budgets to embrace technology because they are geared to improve the way you do your business. But one of the drawbacks has been our attitude. We, the implementers of these programs, what has been the attitude or the level of preparedness on the part of the librarians to embrace technology? That has been the problem. And how are we packaging this challenge to the policymakers to be able to make budgetary provisions for us to implement these technologies in our institutions? And you find it's increasingly becoming a challenge because you are asking the implementer to prepare a strategy to the policymaker to allow him or her have resources to implement a subject this person does not understand. So more often than not, you would rather do away with it than even discuss it at that point. Then what we are saying here is librarians also now need to embrace other skills, let's say expertise in ICT sector. If you have to move forward this program of computerizing your library services and you have a problem, if you are a policymaker, therefore, within your institution, the best thing you could do is to employ or recruit or outsource the services of experts who can assist you to implement your vision as an institution. And also it calls for policy development within institutions. Not many institutions have policies on ICTs, especially libraries, but we have better policies, very nice policies on how to manage libraries which exclude the element of technology. So that will be a beginning point for us to move this agenda forward. The other area I look at is embracing partnerships. If we have to really be on board in terms of ICT integration in our institutions, you need to speak to experts, you need to speak to people who know much about ICTs than you, be they in the library sector or outside the sector. This way, you'll be able to share your vision with them to be able to provide solutions to you. As a library, I would say that we have made strides towards this end, despite of the challenges which are there touching on funding, appropriateness of resources which you want to put online, and dealing with the attitudes of our staff, as well as coming up with the job enrichment programs to train our staff on ICT skills. And lastly, of course, ICTs are very expensive for some institutions. You embrace them from the beginning, but as you move along, the costs of maintaining and learning these ICTs also proves to be a challenge. So you have to be prepared how much you can bite or you can take in for you to sustain these systems. But as I've said, the first solution to this is partnerships. You don't have to do it all by yourself. If you can join some kind of consortiums, you'll be able to access certain resources at affordable rates, and that way you'll be enriching your library collections. However, specifically, we have projects which we are implementing now with support from the stakeholders or partners. A case in point is an e-health project, which we are doing in 2 of our centers in Western Kenya. They are touching on availing resources online, specifically for the healthcare workers who are not regular users of our libraries. But we realized their contribution to development of our communities is immense, yet they do not have resources from where they can get information for purposes of updating what they know in the sector and how they share some of the challenges which are emerging from this sector. For the first time, we were able to bring healthcare workers together with librarians for a training. It really revealed a lot of, potential which the library has in terms of supporting the healthcare sector. For the first time, the healthcare workers confessed that they did not realize the library has potential to fill them with information which they require urgently to be able to be effective in their work. Today, as we speak, this project is a success. Quite a number of healthcare workers come to the library to search for information, as well as trainees who are pursuing training in the medical field, to the extent that the number of PCs in these centers are not adequate, because all the time you find there are people logged in or on to be able to get information about for different purposes. So we have been able to train healthcare workers on how to access information online via internet. We have also been able to train students from these institutions, as well as members of the community who could be having interest to discuss issues touching on their health and their community in general. The impact of this project has been immense, and we have case stories of a few of the respondents who have come back to the library to share how they have benefited from this project. A case in point is one participant who said that we learned that health workers and librarians can disseminate information to the public as a team. It is important for them to have this information shared online and collaborate with other stakeholders in delivery of these services. The other important project I want to share with you is also we are establishing e-resource centers in rural communities, 10 of them, in partnership with one of the local state institution called CCK, is Communication Commission of Kenya. It is charged with the responsibility of ensuring that institutions can embrace ICTs in whatever form, but they have also realized there's a gap between the people who reside in rural communities as opposed to the ones who are residing in urban areas. So through these centers, we are introducing communication technologies to the rural communities for them, first of all, to embrace the importance of ICTs, as well as facilitate communication amongst themselves. A while ago, somebody, I think Mr. Kimani, spoke about the popularity of cell phones in this country. And we are working slowly with some of the service providers to see how best can we use cell phones to be able to access certain information about libraries so that people can know what libraries hold. Indeed, we are piloting on a program with Safaricom, for those of you who are privy about it. And we are working towards whereby the OPACs, that is online public access catalogs, will be accessed on your cell phone. Very soon, before the close of this financial year, I think that program will become a reality. And the reason why we are doing is this. We want to entice members of the public. Even before they walk into your library, they should be able to browse through their phones and see what kind of information your library is holding before even they come. Because many of them, sometimes they are turned away from your libraries simply because whenever they visit your library, they find you don't have relevant information which they want to seek from your library. So this project, I think, will also come to a reality, and it will add value to the public library service and the way we provide services. We have also another project. We are working with USAID in one of the rural communities in northern part of Kenya. It's called G Youth Project. And in this project, the goal of the center is to provide local youth with structured career development information skills and opportunities to pursue careers and transition into higher education using the internet. This rural community is, the internet there is linked with the fiber optic cable, and we have about 50 PCs which are being browsed by the youth in that rural area. Each day, we receive not less than 400 youth coming into this center to browse, to understand more about their aspirations and what they can be able to do with the use of the internet. And more importantly, we are also training the local communities on how basic skills on how to use these electronic gadgets. I know as we speak today, many of our libraries are grappling with the digitization of materials in their institutions. But one of the challenges which comes with this program is, after you digitize this information, what do you do with it? We are producing a lot of information, but how do we manage the content itself? This has been also another challenge which we are experiencing as a library. Therefore, for us, we have found the solution out is to partner with people. The library has no capacity to store all this information you are digitizing. But again, as I said earlier, we are working with Safaricom that whatever information we are digitizing in our library, we should be able to store it on the Safaricom cloud and have a link from there to our library source so that you can be able to get this information. In conclusion, I want to say that internet and other integration of appropriate technology in libraries is a challenge, but I think it's possible for librarians, stakeholders, and policymakers to overcome this if we get the right strategy, we have the right policies in place, and you don't shy away from using technology, however challenging it may appear. But with time, you will be home and dry. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Richard. I think well, myself and a colleague in the room actually recently did some research in South Africa on the use of public libraries. And what we found was that where there are libraries, where there is internet access, there are actually queues in the streets. And some innovative libraries are using SMS to give people numbers for when when their turn comes up to come and use the internet. So it's been really for me a revelation to see how great the need and demand is. We now will hear from Monica. Stepping back, a little bit more of a big picture look of the role of libraries in access to knowledge, development and community building, and how internet can enable that. And Monica, I think I would like you to reflect on this issue, not just from the library perspective, but from the public access perspective. I think Jeffrey didn't target the Internet Governance Forum in his research, but I think if he did, he would have also found that the perception of the importance of libraries in providing internet access in the IGF is very, very low. And I think one way in which we can bring that the importance across is to root the notion of public access to the internet in libraries in the notion of public access to the internet, which I think sadly, in my experience, I've been working in internet access in Africa for a long, long time, since the mid-1990s. And there was a period when there was investment in tele centers and in all kinds of public access centers, and they didn't work that well. They weren't self-sustainable. Then you had internet cafes emerging. But I just feel there's very little emphasis or thinking from policymakers about how Africa is actually different. A one-person, one-computer scenario is not really real. A one-person, one-smartphone scenario is not really realistic. So how should governments take responsibility by using important public access outlets like libraries for giving their citizens access to the internet? So maybe if you can also look at it from the public access perspective, not just the library perspective. Thanks, Monica.
Thank you, Henriette. It's my first time at IGF, and I just love this whole idea of all these different groups talking to each other. I furthermore love the fact that for the first time the word libraries is in the program, and I hope we're starting some sort of a tradition here. Now, I would like to start my presentation, which is not really a presentation, but a dialogue with you, with a question to the audience. How many of you here in the room work in or are librarians? Please hold your hand up. Ah. How many of you are private industry? Hooray. The research that we did together with Jeffrey's firm showed that librarians are notoriously bad at advocating for the value and the potential and the achievements of public libraries to improve the livelihoods in all sorts of ways of their local communities. And librarians often just talk to each other because it's more comfortable than talking to the funders, the policymakers, partners such as private industry. So I'm hoping that we will be able to, based on the findings of this study, to support and facilitate a dialogue between the various stakeholders that could have an interest in exploiting, maximizing, using the potential of public libraries and their outreach to all sorts of different kinds of communities, either currently or potentially. The study found that a typical library user is male, young, sort of getting his education. So one of the questions that we ask is, where are the women? And where are some of the marginalized and disadvantaged communities? The public library has the potential to reach them, especially also via the internet. So just a brief word. IFL is an NGO, an international NGO that works in nearly 50 developing and transition countries with libraries, helping libraries to offer internet-based and e-resource-based services, helping them to afford e-resources, access to e-resources, helping them to create e-resources, helping them to use the internet to improve their services for their users. And we run this public library innovation program, which seeks to stimulate innovative public library services. Now, what do we mean by innovation? By innovation, we mean something that's new in their setting, and we mean with the use of technology. Henriette was saying about public access. We actually want to add the word free public access, because it is the library that can reach and service and help those users that cannot afford to buy their PC, that cannot afford to have their smartphone, that cannot afford to go to the internet cafe. And these communities can find a place to use all the resources, all the knowledge, all the information for their job, for their education, for their social life that are on the internet. So we are talking very much about free public access. Those of you that were in the opening session yesterday heard all these very important people talking about access to knowledge that will empower citizens, digital literacy, relevant information that empowers people's lives. And what we are putting on the table here in this forum is that public libraries have potentially a tremendous role to play because they are in touch with their communities. The Public Library Innovation Program has supported, for now, 12 model projects in developing countries around the world, focusing on children and youth at risk, on farming and farmers, on health, and on employment. Now, you will be, you know as well as I do, that these are very much development areas. They are areas also that are focused on in the Millennium Development Goals. And what we are doing, I'm not even saying trying to do, what we are doing is showing that public libraries, if they are ICT enabled, if their workforce is trained, if they have the capacity and the support, if they have good partnerships, this is very important, they can assess the needs of their community. What is it that the community needs? They can design the services for their community, and they can evaluate their achievements in a way that they can then use them to advocate for sustainability of their services. I earlier gave to all of you this little two-pager about the achievements of those 12 projects. They are based not on our dreams and fantasies, but on fairly rigorous impact evaluation. We worked with these projects over the 12 months to help them to assess the need, to form a baseline, to develop their services, and at the end, to collect the impact that they have been able to make on the lives of their community in these diverse areas that I mentioned earlier. So it was the public library in rural Ghana that wanted to confront the problem of so many youths being unemployed, being out in the street. And in an earlier session that was about youth, there was also a foundation from Eastern Africa that was dealing with that same problem. They brought the youth to their foundation. We are saying what you can do is you can reach out through the public library to these kind of young people. You can give them ICT and leadership training, and you can help them then improve their job prospects and their personal skills, their confidence. And the results of this project show that this is what we've been able to achieve. In Zambia, we are working with a public library and in partnership with software developers, and that's why I'm delighted that here at IGF, there is potentially a great forum for the librarians and the library people talking to software people, programmers, industry. And they have developed on the one laptop per child, which is the kind of affordable hardware solution in a number of countries, 7 kind of games, software games, to learn to read in 7 or 8 different types of games to learn to read in 8 Zambian local languages. And it has been so tremendously successful that the Ministry of Education in Zambia is now rolling that out throughout the library system in the country. In Lithuania, there were a lot of truant school children, and actually they started to populate the library because they didn't want to go to school. And what they have done is they have entered into a tremendously productive partnership with a software firm and the local school. And there is an educational game that the kids can play now in the library, and they can earn points from the school for their studies by completing that game. So what I'm just trying to say here is that there's a big potential of partnerships between the ICT world and the library world. And when that partnership is entered into and directed and focused at solving and meeting the needs of their communities, it is a marriage made in heaven, basically. Now, I don't want to go on because I've been to too many sessions where there was too much talk and not enough discussion. And I don't want us to fall into that trap. But you will see in that leaflet a range of different technologies, coming back to the question asked by the person from Nokia at the beginning. Mobile delivery of information to farmers in Chile, web services to farmers in Serbia, computer design and e-commerce for a community in Nepal that does local artifacts. And, you know, I could go on because I am very enthusiastic about these developments. So we've learned a lot of lessons in that first round, which I won't go into now, but very useful lessons. And we have just gone out and had a call for proposals for the replicability of the first round projects in different countries, in different environments, and with half the money in support. So we test replication of good models, but in low resource environments. And that will be very interesting, so you should watch our website as this is developing. I think that's all I want to say right now. Thank you very much for listening, and I'd be very happy for us to engage in a longer lasting dialogue with all of you interested in bringing public libraries to the IGF.
Thank you very much, Monica. We now would like to enter into some discussion with you about how do we change this? How do we change the perception of our national policymakers? How do we change the perception of the private sector, of the Internet Governance Forum, of the Internet community, actually, the people that are the advocates for expansion and extension of Internet access? And, you know, we formulated several questions, but I think it really boils down to how can libraries drive this change, but how can other actors that care about and that believe in the power of Internet access collaborate in being part of this change? But I first want to ask, are there any library skeptics in the room? You know, the IGF is about debate. Are there people who think that changes in technology and how content is shared and distributed have moved in a direction where we shouldn't really be talking about libraries? I think it's quite good to hear from the skeptics. We have two skeptics. How many? One, two. Or, no, you don't have to be a skeptic. You can just be a critical thinker. Let's hear from you first, and then from this gentleman, Alex, over here. Just introduce yourself, and remember, be short.
My name is Sylvester Otenya. I'm a librarian at a private university. You're talking of ICT. The four presenters have made. ICT for who? When you walk into a class and the first thing you impress that you get is a hungry child, the first thing you see is a child who is malnourished. How do you begin to say this is how you access information using whatever the phones, give the names of the phones, when the child does not know how that phone works? You're talking about health. You have not told this child how to keep himself healthy. You have not told this child, you see him, he has jiggers. The other day, we had children all over the country who could not feed themselves. How do you begin to introduce and say, this is how ICT works? What is the basic things you should teach these children? How to get food, for himself, how to get water for himself or herself. Those are the basic things you give these children in the class. When they are happy and they are fed, then you can begin to say, oh, the teacher here is the only one in the village who has a mobile phone, all right? How about the rest of the people in the village? They have no mobiles. They don't know how to keep clean water, how to boil it, how to keep away some of these diseases. And you're saying ICT for them. This is the challenge. I want them to react and tell us exactly what is the first thing you should do first to these children in the village. Thank you.
Thanks for that. I couldn't have had a more powerful a skeptic open this discussion. I can see the debate is firing up, and I'm going to let it go, but remember, I do want us to come back to the purpose of this workshop, which is to think about how do we change the thinking of policymakers. So over there, and then, okay, I'll get to all of you. Alex, introduce yourself and be brief. Thanks. I think you should have a private discussion with Eiffel. They're actually trying to help libraries. That gentleman at the back, and yes, over there, and then Sylvia, then it's you.
Afternoon. My name is Akol Boniface. I work in the security sector reforms. My issue is about crime and violence. How would libraries become centers of engagement for families at risks so that they can use content, so that they can make sure that the affordable services are accessible to them? Because Africa is turning into a bedrock of violence, and that's why I'm in this room, to know what are we doing. And the other last thing is that how can we make sure that we communicate to them in language that they understand, so that we can turn it into the mother tongue, use their expressions, and make sure that their values are sustained. Thank you.
Sylvia, then Gladys, and then this lady in front.
I'm Sylvia Kalina. I work in APNIC in Australia, but I'm from Colombia. So my comment comes from my previous life as an internet activist in a violent and poor country, where we did telecenters and other initiatives to put libraries in small communities. And I really think that, yes, you're right, there is hunger and violence and all sorts of things happening, and maybe computers and mobiles might not be the first line of defense or the first things we need to do. But there is other types of hunger in terms of knowledge and capacity. And I believe that I've seen the results and the changes in the lives of many young people that were benefit from this first exposure to libraries and access and first websites, first databases, first access to this knowledge. And I'm sure by experience that there are other hungers that we need to feed also. And if they have knowledge, they can get away from that poverty and get a better life. And I think there is a risk when we underestimate the capacity of people just because they are poor or just because they live far away. We need to give the same opportunities to anyone, and it doesn't matter where they are.
Thanks very much for that. Gladys, and then this lady in front. And maybe we should take a pause then. Panelists, are you bursting to react to the discussion so far? Okay, so I'm going to take these three more people, and then we'll have the panels, and then we go to this side of the room.
Okay, my take on libraries. My name is Gladys Mahoney. I work for Computer Aid International. I'm the Director of Africa Programs. My take of libraries is the word library for me, because I was forced to go to a library to read so that I could pass, is punishment. So the first thing, it should be a good name, like, is it an information center? Is it a place where we are going to get information, get entertainment, what is the name that should be called so that we don't feel like it's a bad thing? We associate it with torture and failing and passing exams. I mean, that's where I come from. So that's where we need to go. And then the library themselves, what have they innovated to go E? Is all this information actually there so that when we want food, when we want information on agriculture, it is actually available? And for the skeptics that are saying, what is it that we can do to make sure that we have the right information for the right people, IT for what? I just want to recap on a project that was done by the public in Kenya on a hunger initiative on Kenya for Kenyans. And it was driven on E. It was driven on cell phones. It was driven on the media. It was driven on entertainment circles. And we responded to the need for hunger. So there are those who have the information, which are the librarians in this case and the libraries, and then initiate ways, whether it is entertainment, traditional ways of communicating with people so that they know where to get that information out. And I just want to reiterate, what can we do to the policymakers? What we are doing to the policymakers in regards other areas like e-waste is give them a handbook of advocacy. Give people in the sector, civil society libraries, give you a handbook of advocacy. When you're going to see a member of parliament or somebody else, give them this little 3-page, 4-page handbook, and therefore also practice it where you are. So this forum should come up with, how do we come up with a handbook for advocacy for libraries and e-libraries and information to disseminate to the grassroots? Thank you.
Thanks, Gladys.
Okay, my name is Jane Morioki. I'm from the Network for Non-Formal Schools in Kenya. And these are the schools within the slums and marginalized community. What we've done is that we are trying to increase access for basic education to as many children in Kenya as possible, as well as work towards improving quality of the education provided. And we've started a program that is using technology. We've got, we have set 16 centers, connected them with internet, and 4 of them are learning right now. And we're using video conferencing to teach secondary education to youth from marginalized community to enable them to do KCSE, that is the Form 4 Certificate of Education. And this one you're doing in the night. Now, my question and my concern is that one of the biggest challenges that we've had is access to content and access to material, because these are marginalized community. Even buying a textbooks, it's very, very difficult. And we've been trying to look at where do we get content that is relevant to our secondary education. So the first challenge, again, is local content. And knowing that public libraries, they are, your biggest client are the children, that is the primary and secondary, are the students. And this being your biggest clientele, I think you also need to think seriously of how you're going to digitize our education system and our education content to enable them to be able to access it online. And, as we carry forth about, access to the libraries, we've got the 16 centers within the non-formal setup. We're using public social halls to provide education. And the question of the night, again, it's a very, very new concept. People are saying learning in the night, and we're saying yes, this is something else that the librarian should take up, that we could have e-learning facilities that are operating throughout the night, especially for the non-formal setup, because more and more of these children, they don't have qualified teachers, they don't have access of material, and libraries may be an answer if the content available is relevant. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Intervention.
My name is Charles Nandain. Today, as I was registering, I had an occasion to meet with Raul Zambrano. Raul Zambrano is the Senior ICT Governance Policy Advisor of UNDP. He had just arrived from New York. And he asked me, when I introduced myself as a librarian, he said, so what is your concern in this IGF? And that goes in line with your research. That shows that he's not sensitized enough. So what I told him is because the internet is the library. He got aback and I needed to explain to him. I told him the library is a forum for access to information, and the internet is the wider network of access to information, and therefore that's why I'm here. We had a good discussion. He followed me to 3 different forums that I've attended this morning. I've just left him somewhere. He will be coming. But my concern is the question that you have raised. Do policymakers understand the cause for librarians? I'm just paraphrasing. And I begin at looking at it that the question is wrong. Why should we point at other people and not we ourselves as policymakers? Do we interpret our mandate as librarians? What are the issues that will make us actually to make a difference? Why will somebody fight for our cause? And another question is, when you're talking of do policymakers understand the cause for librarians, what do you mean? Is policymakers at what level? At parliamentary level? Or I will regard Richard Atut here, who has spoken, as our senior-most policymaker. He should be interacting with the same whatever. So at that level, I think our questioning is wrong. We have to change it.
Thank you. I have to hurry us up a little bit. I think we've only got 10 minutes left. And I want to give the panel time to respond. So I am actually going to take this question on this side of the room, and that will then be the last question. Sorry, everyone.
Thank you. My name's Moses Suta from Masinde Muliro University. I happen to have been involved in the setup of a tele center from a background of a librarian. I was the technical expertise for that project, which was looking at how to make information accessible to smallholder farmers within a village. The project took off very well. We had good response. So we were thinking in terms of affordability, but the internet access was very expensive. We tried to get a license from the country regulators to have a radio station there so that it can propagate the information within that center to the farmers affordably. It has not been forthcoming. Then we also put books there and a television so that people can get current awareness and information from the books. They came the first days we started the project, but because we did not have funds to pay for the person who was to manage that place professionally, we did not have a person to run the place. Then recently, while listening to news and reading the press, there is an information coming out that affordable mobile phones, which come from China, they are supposed to, that term to be fake, so they're supposed to be phased out, and yet this is what Kenyans can afford. So I am looking at about 4 questions. Affordability. What can the poor people afford? And therefore, once the poor people have these things, why does the government turn around and start saying that they want to phase them out? That question goes to regulation. We have not gotten the radio license we wanted to use so that information can reach people. Yet you find businessmen are given licenses. Why are the regulators blocking people who want to propagate free information and access to people from getting these facilities? Then I'm looking at the LEAS curriculum. I have heard a presenter, Mr. Atuti, saying that expertise is sourced from outside the library. What is missing in the LEAS curriculum that makes it not possible to employ librarians to do the job in the library so that you have to outsource? Like when they are recruiting librarians for systems librarians, you find that they employ a computer-based person. Yet, in the library, you can have people who can still do that job. Now, there is the question of...
Can you quickly, because we're nearly out of time.
I'm finalizing the last one. We are blamed for not being known to show, or people seem not to know what the libraries do have. Do libraries have budgets for marketing, like the way other multinational companies like Coca-Cola put so much money on advertising? What is missing there? Thank you.
Thank you very much. We've heard about, I mean, I'm going to quickly summarize the questions. There's the challenge of the primacy of development challenges such as poverty and hunger, and how do we reconcile, how do we conceptualize our work to provide information and communication services in relation to these other needs that are so immediate and fundamental. We've heard about libraries not keeping up and being blocked by the cost of materials and technology, and therefore not being relevant to PhD graduates in Africa who fortunately have internet access. We've also heard about equal access, the power, the importance of everyone having the right to have access to technology, to the internet, no matter who they are or where they are, whether they are poor or rich, rural or urban. If new innovation happens in the world, everyone should be able to benefit from that. We then also heard about challenges to libraries, the need for libraries to change their names, change their culture, change the curriculum of the library information services. We've heard someone here challenging libraries to drive the change instead of blaming the policymakers, and the importance of advocacy. And then we also heard about content, the importance of content, and how do we ensure that the content is there for innovative library or public access information programs to make a difference. And I think your point about night learning, I also found so important, because I've been to so many projects where there's internet and library, but the librarians don't want to work late. So, you know, I think changing how we practice is very important. I think the issues of affordability that our last speaker mentioned, and sustainability, and how do you have an ecosystem? So it's policymakers, actually they need to look at regulation that allows innovation and access, regulation that affects cost, and budgeting for sustainability over the long term. So lots of different challenges, and we need to close. So I'm actually just going to ask the speakers, the panelists, to give us like a 3-minute closing statement. And I can see Richard is brimming to bursting with his. So you start for us, and I think Jeffrey, then you, and then Monica. And then I think Ifla, you have an announcement to make. Let's forget you.
Thank you very much for the comments coming from my colleagues. Quickly, I'll just pick 1 or 2 areas which I want to respond to. First is about the issue of addressing poverty in this country vis-a-vis technology. And I think the library will be central in addressing the issues touching on poverty. Because libraries, you are providing information, we are providing education. And when we provide education, we are empowering our communities. Once we are people who are informed, they are easily governable, they are easy to interpret, or it is easy for them to interpret policies and to participate in the general development of the country. So technology will play a big role. Just to give you one example, we are now currently working with the Ministry of Agriculture, trying to address the issue of food security. How? We have partnered with the ministry and we have set up a system which is at the pilot phase. It's called NAFIS, National Agriculture Farmers Information System. The ministry does not have capacity or outlets through which they can provide this information for free. And the library has come out to be handy. The system, we are hosting the server and the website in our premises. They are the people who are generating content, but information will be accessed through our libraries by the farmers, free of charge and online. That's one way of addressing food security and also improving on food production. That way we'll be addressing the need of that child who is poor and who needs to be fed. So libraries are becoming in handy. Secondly, libraries, as we move along, as we have a clear policy that by the year 2014, June, we will be 100% computerized. And that tells you is an issue of policy. Thanks to Charles. Charles was my former college mate, and he's bringing up these issues of policy. We participate, and we are taking deliberate steps to ensure that libraries get their right position in development process. What we are doing is that we are also asking people who are jobless in our communities that you can come to our library, sit in there if you have a computer, or use our computers, trying to set up things which along the model of business outsourcing centers. Youth can sit in the public library, access anything, do business or from their laptop for free of charge. And that way we are also addressing the issues of poverty and employment within our communities. I realize I'm being told that I have to wind up, but I would invite my colleagues who are from around that we can sit down and discuss these issues further and tell you really how libraries we have positioned ourselves. I've seen an increase of budget from government in development for the last 2 years. Have had 100% increments because of engaging again policymakers who are at the level of providing resources for library development. So we are not sleeping. And everyone in this room who is working with the libraries, it's possible we can turn around things. We can turn around this perception about libraries if we do the right things, which can impact the communities directly. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Richard, and apologies for having to cut you short. Jeffrey.
Thanks. I'm really not a librarian, so I may not be able to answer a lot of the questions you asked, but one or two comments regarding the first skeptic who asked about libraries, IT for who. I think ICT is important because even though the child is poor, even though he lives in the rural area and he wants food and he wants clothing and everything else, we all know that access to information is very, very important. Forums such as ICT can actually be used to enhance the way access to all those things you mentioned is facilitated. A lot of other issues that were raised about advocacy, about the role of librarians in policy making, budgeting and funding for libraries are actually covered in the bigger report that we presented. So by going in there, you can actually see where the gaps are, where the opportunities are for improvement, what challenges you're likely to face, and issues like that. So I'd like to ask Monica to respond to some of the issues raised because she's more aware and focused on that area.
Okay, so I'm totally overwhelmed about the knowledge, the passion, the ideas that came back from the discussion, and I'm very sorry that we don't have another 1.5 hours to go deeply into them. Because each one of these really, really great questions has a deep discussion behind it. So I would say we have created a footprint for libraries in the IGF today. And let's build on that footprint. Let's make that footprint a step and 2 steps and more steps. I saw that there is an instrument, and now I'm talking really as an IGF ignorant here, that is called a dynamic coalition, that one can create a dynamic coalition within the IGF for a certain issue, for a certain concern that has to do with the internet and a number of stakeholders. Let us all that were here today work together. And I'm not sure if I'm saying this and I'm right that one can do this, but let's try and continue this forum, the libraries within IGF. Let's try and continue, build on this, and turn it into something which captures the interest and the engagement of other stakeholders. I don't know exactly how we're going to do it, but we will find a way if we can.
Thank you very much, Monica. Can I just add or propose that we make it a dynamic coalition on free public access to the internet and libraries? Okay. So that it's not just limited to libraries in its narrow institutional historical sense. Can we have a show of hands? Are people interested? Do you feel there's a need for further deepening the discussion on this? Fantastic. So I think we can applaud ourselves. And don't worry about the mechanics. IGF mechanics are fluid. We'll register our dynamic coalition. I have an announcement from Stuart Hamilton, and then I'll bring us to a formal closure.
Okay, so I'm Stuart Hamilton. I'm from the International Federation of Library Associations and Institutions. And there's been some really excellent comments here, many of which have actually shown up, particularly Alex's comment here, that libraries actually sit in a wider ecosystem. And one of the issues that we have to deal with quite a lot is copyright and access, in the case of Alex, to academic journals and academic articles. And I wanted to draw your attention to session number 79 tomorrow, which is called Copyright Under a Magnifying Glass. That's taking place at 11 a.m. in conference room number 12. And I'll be speaking there from the perspective of libraries. And I think that those of you who are interested in libraries' role in the broader society, and in fact some of the ways that issues relating to intellectual property affect access to knowledge, should really come along to that session. So once again, that's tomorrow morning, 11 o'clock in conference room number 12. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Stuart. I want to thank all of you who were here. You were one of the most engaged workshops I've ever attended in the IGF, with a strong energy. I want to thank our fantastic captioner. I don't even know your name, but just, you know how hard this lady has to work to sit there and type everything everyone says and get all the spellings and names right. I want to thank our remote participation team, even though they failed. But I know that was not for want of trying. And I want to thank Barbro. I can see you over there. So thank you very much from Finland, who was going to tell us about libraries and internet and access in Finland. But thank you very much for being here, and I hope you could follow. And next time we'll have you with us. And then I want to thank our panel. Richard, thank you very much for coming. It's very good to be in Kenya and listen to the Kenyan experience. And Jeffrey, to give us some evidence. We all know how important evidence-based policy is. And Monica for being the driving force behind this workshop. And Monica's team, there is someone called Rosalie, who's in Rome, who's been working and helped us to organize this. So thanks very much, everyone. Let's hope we make change.